When are you worried for me?
I don't know if you knew that. The last time when they called, when you used to read to the blind at the lighthouse.
Oh, yeah.
When they called and said, you didn't show up for your normal Thursday thing, that after I called and you weren't there, I went up to your apartment, and there was a woman there who knew me and let me in. And as I opening the door to your apartment, I'm just I hope she's not like laid out on the floor there, the heart attack or something.
Yeah.
But that's basically that's when I get concerned, when I can't get a hold of you.
Yeah.
What do you remember about the first time we met?
It's funny when I think of it, because we just kind of got together, and it was hard to believe that you were in New York City, but thinking of the fact that we got together was really great.
So we never met before I moved here, right? Or before I visited, at least, right? Growing up.
That's right, yeah.
Right?
We knew we were related, but never personally, face-to-face met each other.
Because I don't even remember if I spoke to you on the phone. I must have maybe once or twice.
Yeah.
But growing up,
Never.
you were just the New York Sugimotos.
Yeah, that's right.
And we're the West Coast Sugimotos. So.
Yeah. What experience do you think has shaped me the most, and why?
It's funny, I don't know, since I didn't grow up with you. I mean, I know of only the things historically that you've gone through, like the internment camp.
Yeah.
But I don't know how that affected you. Was that a big effect? Did that have a huge effect on you?
I think it had a big effect on the family, in the sense that we were taken out of our home in California and suddenly put into this concentration camp. And so the relationship was always there as far as the families and communities are concerned, but I think it changed all of our lives in a way that was unpredictable.
Yeah, and I think like not just the culture of what happened to one culture, but it's kind of the whole environment around. Like when you talk about my uncle, he was in the U.S. Army when my parents were in the internment camp.
Yeah.
And he had come back, I guess, kind of on a furlough, just in time to catch neighbors of my grandfather kind of selling off some of his farm equipment. They were his so-called friends, kind of ripping him off. But that was the climate of panic.
Yeah.
And that's when you see, like, when people, kind of rule by fear, and just get people all riled up, you can see that could happen again to intern people and discriminating against people just out of fear.
Yeah. Ironic to think he's in the Army uniform of the U.S. Army.
Yeah.
He has to check with the MP who was in the same uniform so he could come behind the barbed wire and come and visit us.
Yeah.
And here he is in the U.S. Army. So the irony of having somebody who's serving in the Army, and yet his whole family and the rest of the Japanese population from the West Coast area is incarcerated.
Yeah, it's a little pretty crazy. But you were in 2 camps?
Yeah, in Jerome and Rower,
and Rower,
in Arkansas.
So then, when did you leave?
In 1945, we came to New York City.
So you went from the camp to New York?
Directly from the camp to New York, and it's
how old were
quite
you
a
then?
transition.
Yeah.
6 years old.
So you were, okay.
Yeah.
How long were you in the camp?
3 years, 1942 to 45. So it's enough time to really shape your life in a very different way than you expected.
And for a 6-year-old, you would remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why are you hesitant to share your past in the camps with me?
I don't think I am. In fact, I try more and more to think about it and to try to remember it. because I think that it's part of American history, and the fact that it happened, you didn't experience it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because when you think about it, it's all, for me, something where I was with a family and felt very comfortable, just like you would if you were outside.
You normalize
because
it.
You're with your family, and everyday life is very much alike. You eat with your family, you go to school, and you play with your friends, going into the swamps and running around and playing, and then sneaking back into the camp under the barbed wire. It's something that, as a child, was an adventure rather than a sadness.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for the adults, it was a totally different thing because they had to deal with the unknown over a period of time that they didn't know how long that would be. What is one experience you wish I never had?
Well, the camps would be a nice thing to erase, but more recently, I wish you hadn't gotten run over by a kid on a bike and split your kneecap.
Yeah.
That's not a good thing.
Yeah, I think that's the one big thing that I would say I wish I hadn't.
I still remember that's the first time I think you've been in a hospital bed then, huh?
Yeah.
And for me to get have messages left by people actually who were very nice to you, who let you use their cell phones and carried you over to a bench and called an ambulance.
Yes.
That was pretty nice.
Yeah.
How do you think I perceive my cultural identity differently than you, and why?
I think that we had two very different experiences growing up.
I think so.
I mean, one for me was being in camp and trying to live a life that was very different from the way you lived outside. So I think historically we've experienced two different kinds of parts of our years growing up.
For me, growing up around, there's a big Japanese American community in LA. Basically, the idea was to be as American as possible and not talk about the camps. And it was Japanese American. Well, like a friend of mine from Japan would say, he would laugh. A friend of mine, a Japanese guy from Japan, has a wife who's Caucasian, but she speaks fluent Japanese. She would ask me all these questions about Japanese culture, and he would be in the back laughing, saying, he's not Japanese, which is true. I'm American of Japanese heritage. And when I told his wife that my cousin, another just like me, third generation Japanese American, married a girl from Japan, he would say in Japan, that's a mixed marriage. Which is true. Because, I've never been to Japan even, and I don't speak the language.
What's one thing you always wanted to know about me? Secrets.
I don't know if I have that many questions about you. The only thing is, I think we talked about if you ever thought about a family, and how that worked out or didn't work out. I always tell people Madeleine she's like the nicest person I know, and I always thought, I don't know, Madeleine would have been like a perfect mother, I think, yet, it never happened for you. And I always thought, well, she must have had opportunities.
Well, it's interesting when you think about it, because you get so involved in what you're doing in terms of your work that you really don't think about it in terms of marriage or no marriage. It's just, you don't really think about other things, that you're just enjoying what you're doing and feel very satisfied, and that kind of keeps you going, and you don't realize as the years pass.
What's the most unique thing about our relationship?
Well, that I think as time goes on, I'm more appreciative of our having more things in common than when you and I were younger because with time, our interests and involvement have become closer and closer, and I think that makes a big difference in terms of our relationship and the strength of it.
Oh yeah, I agree. I think, and as I've gotten older, I could see our relationship, getting closer and closer because not actually getting closer in age, but I'm getting closer to your age.
Yeah.
I can understand more the benefits and the solid feelings of family.
Well, you have less of that strong connection by having children or grandchildren, which makes a difference because it's historically kind of traveling through their blood and their genes.
Exactly, and it's good that younger generation they're still very interested in it, so that's good. They can they're going to be the keepers of the family history. Good thing because I'm really bad at that.
Yeah.